record again. And that is what are we reviewing? 12 Years a Slave. This is the 2013 film that won Best Picture way back at the 2014 Academy Awards. I believe we reviewed it way back in the Awesome Addiction days from memory. It was directed by Steve McQueen, who I believe also won Best Director that year. I'm going to have to double check that, and I will. The IMDb synopsis goes, in the antebellum United States, Solomon Northup, a free black man from upstate New York, is abducted and sold into slavery. Directed by Steve McQueen, as I noted, written by John Ridley, adapted by Solomon Northup's autobiographic book, 12 Years a Slave. It stars Chiwetel Ejiofor, Michael Kenneth Williams, Michael Fassbender, Brad Pitt, Lupita Nyong'o, who also won for Best Supporting Actress that year as well. There are some performances by Benedict Cumberbatch, Paul Giamatti, and some other notable actors as well.
One of the Corridor crew.
What's that, sorry?
One of the Corridor crew guys.
Oh, yeah. Actually,
is in it.
That's where I recognize him. Damn.
Yeah.
There you go. Anyway,
Which one?
He's one of the abductors. The one that was nice.
So Your Name is Platt. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So just to go through its several awards here. It was nominated, for Best Achievement in Production Design, Film Editing, Directing, Costume Design, performance by an actor in a supporting role for Fassbender, performance by an actor in a leading role for Chiwetel, and the three categories it won: Best Writing Adapted Screenplay for John Ridley, Best Performance by an Actress in a Supporting Role for Lupita Nyong'o, and Best Picture. The producers are Brad Pitt, Didi Gardner, Jeremy Kleiner, Steve McQueen, and Anthony Katagas. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Let's go over to the rating. I'm sure very high, 8.1 on IMDb. That puts it, I think, up there. Yeah, 204, rated top 204 on IMDb. 96 Metascore. And gentlemen, the Rotten Tomatoes, what are your guesses?
It's got to be like 97. It's humongously high.
97 plus or minus 1.
95%.
You can't be a critic and hate this movie.
Yeah.
This is true. Anyway, I'm going to post the link in the chat if you guys want to check out any more of the details of the film. Like I mentioned, I believe we reviewed this way back in the Awesome Addiction days. But Terry, seemingly you, if you're on that episode, you must not have contributed, because this was your first time watching it, Ben. This is us revisiting it. I hadn't seen it since that first cinematic viewing, and. Yeah, no, I think it's one of those films like, any sort of true life, very, what's the word? Help me out here, boys. Very difficult to watch film, right? Just like exposing a side of humanity that is not enjoyable to watch or learn about. Important film, of course, but not something that you're going to throw on a Friday night just because you happen to be in that kind of mood.
It's really hard to rewatch. You don't ever just sit there and go, I want to feel miserable for an hour and a half. Let's go with it. 12 Years a Slave.
I can think of 2 examples of exactly what you're talking about, because that's one of the first thoughts I wanted to share. This movie kind of reminded me, it made me feel the same way that I did when I watched like The Passion of Christ and when I watch Schindler's List. They're difficult movies to watch and rewatch. Like, I haven't revisited The Passion of Christ since its cinematic release, because it's very, very difficult to watch. I think I've seen Schindler's List a couple of times, but that's because I have a friend who's incredibly passionate about that period of history, and it's his very favorite movie. So I've seen it once, and I saw it again with him. And this movie is probably going to be the third movie that I list when I think of movies that are like that, because it is. It's
for me, it's The Counselor. I cannot go back there.
That's for a different reason.
That's just bizarre. I have no desire to revisit this one. But before we get sidetracked, Terry, I'm keen to hear your first watching of 12 Years a Slave.
Yeah, it's brutal, and I was struck by how little people saw and thought of slaves in the South at that time of history. Like the most recent film that I've seen, apart from this today, that kind of touched on slavery, that was trying to represent that it was from that time period, is Django Unchained. And it doesn't make light of slavery. It paints it as really horrible, but it kind of does it in a bit of a parody of the situation, even though you've got Leonardo DiCaprio's character that's really, really brutal towards slaves, and it's not a pleasant, like, that's not the part of the film that you look back on with any kind of fondness, because it's horrendous. So it being the closest thing that was in my mindset, I'm just like, people actually treated other human beings like this, that, like, as property. Like that dude that collapses in the cotton field, and they're like, give him some water. I'm like, oh, that's nice. And they just dump a bucket of water on his head, and then the overseer person comes up and kicks him a few times, and then it basically smash cuts to the dude being sewn into a bag and put into the ground because he literally fire trucking died in a field because he'd been worked to death. And like that eulogy scene where the guys, the two dudes that are helping to bury him, is like, he practically raised us. I'm like, you guys have been on this farm since you were children. That's horrible. Like, that's devastating. And then you've got Lupita Nyong'o's character,
Patsy,
literally begging for Chiwetel Ejiofor Solomon to kill her because she would rather die and she won't kill herself. And I'm like, that human dignity that people have that prevents them from killing themselves, she's still got that somehow. Like, she's not throwing herself off the second story building in the hopes of ending her own life. Like,
didn't she say it was I can't remember, but didn't she say something like, because she can't go to heaven if she kills herself? Like, she was
probably something.
She's arguing, it's like, this, you won't go to hell because this is an act of kindness, is actually what she was saying.
And that
so the reason she hasn't done it to herself is because she's been told that she's been indoctrinated into Christianity as part of her slavery, and they they teach suicide is bad.
I just find it interesting that you mentioned the indoctrination into Christianity, because you've got Benedict Cumberbatch's character who seems to genuinely, not to get too much into the Christian weeds, the pieces of scripture that you see Benedict Cumberbatch sharing, they're broad. It's almost like he's actually holding a mass and sharing the word, where Fassbender's character takes a portion of scripture and then twists it. He's using the specific parts of the Bible that talk about certain elements of slavery. He's totally misquoting it to justify his ownership and also to scare them into being bad, like into being good slaves. He's trying to scare out of them being bad slaves. And the contrast between how these two people view their like the word or Christianity and their viewpoint, they're in stark contrast to one another. Like Benedict Cumberbatch's character, he's still a slave owner, which is horrible, but I kind of feel like he's trying to do the best he can for these slaves. He shouldn't be owning them. He should probably be buying them and then kind of setting them free and then paying them. But when you compare his character to Fassbender's character, it's like, obviously one of them is better than the other.
I think that character is there to show us that, like, it doesn't take much for even the kindest soul to fall into what's a social norm of, like, to be blinded truly and not see or not have the intelligence to look back and reflect on the time that they live in the social construct that they live in. Like, it's like in our living lifetimes, it's probably like the homosexual agenda is the easiest parallel example. You don't really have to go back very far at all, where you can find an otherwise perfectly nice grandmother or whatever who's not got a hateful bone in her body, but is a homophobe because it's just how she has become. And so I think that's his character. Cumberbatch's character is really there to not just show us that if you're a slaver, it means you're a bad guy. You know, it doesn't mean that there were all these terrible bad people and they all owned slaves. It was like, no, it was this terrible bad time for everybody, and there were some bad people taking real advantage. I don't want to say advantage of it. I mean, everyone that owned slaves is taking advantage of a terrible situation, but
I know what you mean. I know what
it's
you
mean. It's trying not to do a Django Unchained, where it's like if you're a slaver, that means you're a villain, like an archetypal villain in the movie, and you deserve to be
precisely. It's
slain
definitely not. It's definitely not painting a caricature. You said this was what year?
2013.
2013. I'm trying to think of like the visual effects. The music was phenomenal. I don't know. I'm kind of devastated. I was pretty moved to the verge of tears. Like, if I didn't have something that was already set as a distraction for as soon as the movie finished, I probably would have been crying a little at the end of the film. Because it hits you really, really hard that this was a real situation for so many people. And, you know, it's encouraging. His character's unwavering hope that he would eventually get out, to me, is the thing that was the most moving and amazing about this film. Like, the guy has no reason to hope, and he's even when he meets Brad Pitt's character, this Canadian who has you know, these universal truths apply to all humanity, black, white, or otherwise. Even when that guy's kind of saying those things, he's still terrified to share the truth that he was a free man, that he was from the northern states, and that he was abducted. But he still did it. You know, he still had this kernel of hope for the goodness in another man, even though he had heaps of reasons to distrust all white people. He still kind of had that hope. And it's just, I don't know, it's crazy to me. It's insane that that's where, I don't know, he found himself and, you know, managed to move home. He put it all into an autobiography. I think it's astounding in a time.
Spoiler alert.
Oh, would you? Yeah. Okay. It's not 12 years a slave and then I die. The title. Anyway. The thing that astounded me in the post credit where it says that he manages to find the two people that abducted him, and he like sues them. But
I love that.
They well, I can't remember if it says he sues them, but like he tries to pursue justice, and he can't because the law still isn't applied equally at that time. He can't testify against them because he's black and they are white, and that's also a blight on American history, history in general. But the fact that he was able to track them down in the first place in a time where you don't have, you know, social media links and like Google tracking and stuff like that. It's
the counterpoint is that like
the population was much lower.
Yeah, there's like 100 people in the town. Like, you know, everyone.
Yeah. But you could just move a state and then it's like no one there knows you.
Yeah.
You're a completely new human being to that town. It's
and even the idea of like trying to run away as well. Like, where do you, like what do you do? Where do you go?
Where do you go?
It's
he doesn't know how he got there. He doesn't, like, he might not even know exactly where he is.
Yeah,
it's gnarly.
Yeah, well, that's, you know, the town that he goes into to fetch the items for, you know, the mistress is like,
that's the
he might not know the name of that town. Like, he knows the name of the town, but he doesn't know what that means or where exactly he is.
Exactly.
I just want to quickly get to chat. Scotty mentions he has another movie that's hard to rewatch. That's Rabbit Proof Fence. I think it's a film that he's been he's
Yeah,
been very
Australian
complimentary of, and I'm yet to see. So that is on the list, Scott. He says Django kind of feels like it wasn't intentionally, quote, ridiculous as an attempt to highlight to how ridiculous that time in US history. And yeah, speaking of products of their time, when we were talking about those earlier. Yes, and you did earn that badge. Thank you, Scott, for banning that person.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Ben, I want to get to your thoughts in a moment. I just want to quickly say, like, yeah, my second time watching, I hadn't watched it since the cinemas, and man, this movie hit me on a completely new level. That, like, I remembered key moments of this film, and I understood the entire story. I knew exactly where it was going in the chapters of his life, you know, being owned by all property of this slave owner and then moving to the next one, and so on and so forth. So nothing came as a surprise, but no exaggeration here, guys. I was crying, I want to say, as much as I was watching About Time for the first time on a secondary watching of this one. Like, it really, to your point, Terry, like, I am just blown away that 160 years ago we were doing this to ourselves. Like, we were doing this to other members of humanity. Like,
not even a full 2 lifetimes ago.
Yeah, it breaks my heart. And seeing you know, children being ripped away from their mothers and their fathers, and just the disgusting behavior that that was on display by, you know, people who were only like 2 generations ago, Terry. It really just broke my heart. And there were moments at the very end when he's, you know, reunited. It's that hit me so hard. I could not imagine 12 years of slavery and then that feeling. Like, how bravo to Steve McQueen and Chiwetel and the entire, you know, cast and crew on that scene as well, because how do you portray something like that in a way that's you know, does it any kind of justice? It's just, I think this film's masterful, and I'm so glad it won Best Picture. There were some fantastic films that year as well. Like, it was going up against oh crap, I watched them, the producers win Best Picture. Once I finished, I went and watched Lupita's acceptance speech, and I watched McQueen's acceptance speech as well. And I'm just trying to think of some other films that year. It was Wolf of Wall Street, Gravity. There were 9 nominees in total. I'll bring it up in a moment when Ben starts talking. But man, by the end of this, I'm like, okay, this now has to be one of my favorite films. Like, it's just masterful.
Just wanted to say one thing just before you. Sorry, Ben. By not pulling punches, that's the thing. Like, they did it without, like, that whipping scene against that post. Like, you handle situations like, how do we address this part of history? It's like, well, you show it in its raw form. Like, this happened. This was a daily occurrence across hundreds of individual people's circumstances, and they showed it incredibly brutally, and they didn't sugarcoat it. They like, I was put off by that scene, by how brutal it was. And I think that was the point. And so I just wanted to say that's like, I tip my hat and have nothing but respect for them doing that, or making this film. Like, it's horrible that the subject matter exists for them to make the film.
The films that went up against at the 2014 Academy Awards for Best Picture, and that it won against, included The Wolf of Wall Street, Captain Phillips, Dallas Buyers Club, American Hustle, Her, Gravity, Nebraska, and Philomena. So tough competition.
I remember Philomena.
Remember Philomena? That was a nice story. I never saw Nebraska, but I've seen 8 of those 9 films actually. Great year. That was the year we started the show, way back when. Ben, but I'm most curious to hear what you think.
I remember, Shane, you having a hot take on Chiwetel Ejiofor when we reviewed this.
I'm glad you mentioned this, because I should have already.
You were like, I can see him acting, I don't like it. And we were like, we were absolutely grounded by that. It was an insane take. And I will never forget it. Like, every time I watch him in a film, I'm like, Shane can see him acting. Like, in my head, like, he's doing a bad job, but I can't tell that Shane can. But
Mm.
I've got to say that did taint my second watching, where I remembered that I could see him acting, but for whatever reason, I allowed myself to just like completely and utterly believe in his character, and I think that helped. But yeah, I'm still not sure I would have given him, the nomination for best actor. I maybe I was too harsh at the time. Like, I think he does a great job, but yeah, it's certainly that first impression has certainly, I think, tainted all of his performances for me. Honestly, like it's just that first impression that now is like, oh yeah, I remember when I first was introduced to you on screen, and that was my impression. So I think that's
Like
it's
Kirsten
just something
Stewart.
I'll carry. Yeah,
That's the Kirsten Stewart for me.
yeah.
I still refer to her as blank face, and she has certainly grown as an actress since Twilight, but because of her portrayal of Bella in Twilight was very plain.
yeah, there are
I
plenty
can't-
of
yeah.
actors out there that look good and read words, and she's one of those. And like, there's bigger names than her that
Yeah.
I put in the same category. Like, what's his face? Thor.
Chris
Um,
Hemsworth. Yeah.
Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah, Chris Hemsworth. He can't act for shit, in my opinion. He's just a pretty face that reads words good, and that's good enough. Like,
Yeah.
he's perfectly cast in the movies that he's in.
Yeah. That's
Great
true.
job, Chris Hemsworth. Just trying to, you guys were hitting all these beats, and I was like, oh, I want to add 2 cents here and 2 cents there. The scene where he's like heading off to the store to buy some groceries or whatever, and he comes across these guys about to hang this dude. That is the most dreadful scene to me. That is
Yeah.
the whipping scene for Terry. Like, I can't
Yeah.
go there at that place anymore. It makes this
Killing.
thing happen in my stomach, where everything is real heavy. I don't know how to put it. The crying at sad things thing. It takes a really, really lot of effort to get a drop out of me when it's melancholy and sadness and dread. I will empathize the shit out of this movie, but I don't cry until the last scene, and then it's like a bloody dam opening up. It's always the positive thing at the end of the melancholy, the twist at the end,
Yeah.
the
reuniting
achievement
with the
at the
father.
end. Yeah, I found my dad, I found my kids, the whatever it is, the I well up, man, when that happens. You cannot stop it. Never on the down, but always on the way back up, I'm crying. And I don't know why. But I think about that a lot, especially when I'm tearing up in a movie. I'm like, I'm not the only one tearing up. I ruined a big chunk of this movie, especially the momentum that it was going with. Anyway, I'll just tell you the story. I was in the cinemas, and the scene happens where they're all sleeping on the floor, and this random woman slave wakes up Solomon, and like they have like a quickie on the floor, and then as soon as they're done, she cries and rolls over and like comes back to reality and realizes she's like completely fucked. And yes, so she like cries, and I had to bite my lip and not say, "We've all been there, right, guys?" And it was so funny to me. It completely pulled me out of the movie, ruined it for myself. Stupid me. And I always remember that when I think of this movie. I'm like,
Yeah.
Stupid me. Why can't I just like sit there and
Yeah.
be there? Instead of come up with that stupid joke. It wasn't even funny. I didn't even say it. I just kept it to myself.
Yeah. That is funny. Like, that's maybe we shouldn't make light of that particular situation, but that is an objectively funny joke to make. Of
The joke obviously is that none of us have actually been there, but the having a girl cry
after yes, yeah.
Pardon me. I too thought that the best supporting actress win was like the smartest. Well, the
best.
The best decision. It was like, yeah, that was the best character. She always stands out to me. What was the character? I can't. Patsy. Patsy is always the movie to me. It's like the thing where she's going on about like how she just went to get some soap because she stinks, and she will not she can tolerate a lot of shit, but smelling is just where she draws this this line. I love that
Yeah.
thing. That was like the
Especially
best
with
line
how
of the
hard
movie.
she works. She's like 500 pounds a day of cotton, more than
Yeah.
any man. I will be clean. It's like, yeah, you tell him.
Tell him. But other than that, love the crap out of this movie. I have seen it a couple times since the cinema, and will watch it again. It is on a schedule. It's a very slow schedule because it's a very dark place you've got to go to.
Yeah.
And it's hard to motivate yourself to watch a movie that takes you to those places, but this one is worth it. Absolutely worth it.
Yeah, there's so many, like, I'm just thinking about that soap scene. I'm thinking about the scene that, you know, Terry, you mentioned earlier, where Patsy goes to Solomon and asks him to relieve her of this life, and he refuses to, and then you see where Patsy's story go, and like she gives him a look as if to say, like, you know, I didn't want to be here and I'm still here, not because of you, but look at my existence, and this is exactly what I was talking about when I asked you to kill me. Like, this is the last thing I want, you know. So did a terrible job sort of explaining myself there, but
No, I know what you mean. It's like after when they're dressing her whipping wounds, and she like leans up and looks like straight at him. That's 100. Yeah, definitely. She's like, if you had killed me, like I asked, nay begged, this would not be happening right now. And this is way worse than being dead. Like having died however many years ago it was, would have been better, preferable to this. Yeah.
Anyway, that's 12 Years a Slave. It is on Stan at the moment. I think that's how I watched it. Yep, that's right. If you have not seen 12 Years a Slave, please set some time for yourself where you can be supported by your loved ones as well after watching it, because and look, watch it with someone if that helps as well. Like, being able to I was watching it here in my room, and I was tempted to just like go out to mum and just like, you know, dump all this emotion on her. Like, mum, I'm just like, why is humanity so shit? You know, I didn't want to subject her to that, but it's certainly helped discussing it with you boys, because oh man, just
it's heavy.
Sharing this, and this very heavy experience just makes it that much easier. So anyway, yes, it's on Stan. 12 Years a Slave. Can't recommend it more.